In this hyper-accelerated world we're all in, thinking you can just set it and forget it.
Well, it's
Doesn't
not
make
just a
sense.
bad strategy. It's almost like professional malpractice these days,
Absolutely.
especially when you're talking about something as fundamental as understanding and managing risk. The ground, it feels like it's constantly shifting under our feet.
Yeah.
What felt stable yesterday could be, I don't know, a whirlwind today.
It really can. The pace of change is just incredible.
And that's exactly why on the deep dive today, we're really plunging into a super dynamic part of the COSO enterprise risk management, the ERM system, specifically review and revision.
Mm-hmm. The ongoing part.
Yeah, think of it like the ultimate reality check for your whole risk strategy.
Mm.
So this is part 4 of the COSO integrated framework. It builds directly on, governance, culture, strategy, setting objectives, perform all that stuff we've explored before.
Right, the foundation. Exactly. Those earlier parts laid the groundwork for ERM. Today, we're shifting gears, focusing on how you constantly refine it, how you make sure it's a living, breathing thing within an organization, or maybe even just in your own professional life.
That's not static.
Our mission today, to really uncover how organizations and honestly how you can stay not just up to date, but actually ahead of the curve by relentlessly assessing, reviewing, and improving that whole approach to risk. But before we dive deeper, just a quick reminder. This deep dive is based on material from Farhat lectures.
Right.
All the content, examples, explanations, it's all derived from the really comprehensive accounting resources over at farhatlectures.com. So whether you're an accounting student, maybe a CPA candidate, or already a professional, definitely visit the website. They've got additional practice questions, video lectures, detailed support, basically everything to help reinforce today's topic.
That's a great resource.
Huge thanks to Professor Farhat for providing all this valuable material. Okay then. Let's unpack this. We've all been there, right? You make a plan, you think about the potential pitfalls, you feel kind of prepared, but then life or, business just throws that curveball. So, okay, we've identified risks, we've prioritized them, maybe put some strategies in place, but the world just does not stand still. What's maybe the biggest misunderstanding you see organizations have about this continuous assessment piece? What makes it so absolutely crucial?
Well, what's really fascinating and maybe a bit concerning is how many organizations still treat risk like it's a static snapshot.
Yeah.
They do a risk assessment, develop a profile, and then they sort of file it away. Assume it's good for a year,
Yeah.
maybe longer.
Check the box. Done for now.
Exactly. But the risk environment, it's a constantly evolving landscape. Your risk profile today is almost certainly not going to be your risk profile tomorrow or next month. The primary goal of this first principle we're talking about, assessing substantial changes, isn't just like tracking the changes themselves. It's really about understanding their second and third order effects. For example, a shift in regulation isn't just a compliance headache. It could fundamentally alter your market position, maybe even create whole new business models, or destroy old ones.
Ah, so it ripples out.
Totally ripples out. The objective here is to be continuously scanning, looking for new changes, shifts and risks you already know about, and integrating all that into the organization's overall risk portfolio. And this assessment, it's not just something you schedule, like quarterly. Often it's triggered by specific events, things that might fundamentally change how much risk the organization can, or wants to, tolerate.
So it's less about a calendar appointment and more about setting up, like, tripwires, things that signal, hey, something significant just happened, we need to look at this.
That's a great way to put it, tripwires. And when you talk about those triggers, what's one that often catches even, really sophisticated organizations off guard, even the ones who think they're pretty vigilant?
Yeah, what's the blind spot?
Often, and this might sound counterintuitive, it's the internal events.
Yep.
Precisely because they seem like they should be controllable.
Huh. Okay. Like what?
Well, take rapid growth. Sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Every company wants rapid growth.
The dream scenario.
It is. But if an organization expands too quickly, it can literally falls under its own weight. Its systems, its supply chain, maybe its people. They just can't keep up. They can't scale effectively. I've seen companies with amazing products just stumble because they couldn't actually handle their own success.
Oh.
Yeah, leading to unhappy customers, employee burnout, quality control nightmares. It's a really ironic risk. Success itself can become a massive vulnerability if you don't manage that growth aspect properly.
So success isn't always just good.
Not purely. Other internal things. Innovations may be your own, maybe a competitor's. They could make your current product obsolete almost overnight.
Yeah.
Constant employee turnover is another big one. You lose skilled people. That institutional knowledge walks out the door.
Yeah, that hurts.
And even leadership changes. A new CEO, a new CFO, a new chief risk officer. They can fundamentally shift the culture and, by extension, the whole risk profile and appetite of the organization.
That's a really potent reminder that not all the danger comes from outside the castle walls, so to speak. It's almost like the business version of knowing your own body's limits before you try and run a marathon.
Exactly. Know thyself, right?
Okay, so what about those external factors then? Because those feel, almost by definition, less controllable. They're just out there.
They absolutely are, yeah.
Hmm?
And they require a different kind of radar, maybe a wider scan. We see shifts in the regulatory environment all the time. New mandates from, say, the FDA, the FAA, the government, the SEC. These can introduce huge compliance risks. Or, sometimes surprisingly, they can open up new avenues for business if you're agile enough to adapt quickly.
Opportunities disguised as problems.
Sometimes economic cycles, too. Whether you're in a recession or an expansion, that dramatically changes market dynamics, consumer behavior, everything. Even, a new political administration coming in could overhaul big areas like taxes or climate change regulations, creating entirely new risk landscapes overnight.
Right. Things you might not have even considered a risk before.
Precisely. And then, of course, there are the really big, global, often unforeseen events. I mean, COVID-19 is the starkest recent example, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody's risk profile was immune to that. It completely reshaped operations, supply chains, customer behavior.
Yeah.
It felt like it happened overnight globally. It was a brutal lesson that the greatest threats often aren't the ones you're actively watching. They're the ones you didn't even see coming.
So it boils down to being incredibly vigilant, almost like having this, I don't know, high-tech radar system constantly scanning the environment. For me, what really stands out is how interconnected it all is. Like you said, a leadership change, seemingly internal, can ripple out and force a total rethink of external risks. It's not just knowing what's out there, but how it all interacts, how one thing influences another.
You've absolutely nailed the core challenge there. And it's exactly why the next principle, reviewing risk and related performance, is just so critical. Because of that interconnectedness, your analysis is never truly done. It can't be.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for me. So once we've assessed all these changes, internal, external, we can't just tick the box and move on, right? Like you said, we need to constantly review what we're doing and, importantly, how we're actually performing against those risks. What does that ongoing review really look like? What does it entail beyond just a simple check-in?
It's precisely about that ongoing dynamic nature you mentioned. Risk review isn't, a one-time audit you do and then you're good. It's more like a continuous, often periodic pulse check on the organization. You're constantly asking the fundamental question. Is the actual risk we're facing starting to creep up? Is it becoming greater than our organization's stated risk tolerance? That's the bedrock principle here. Actual risk must stay less than the risk the organization has decided it's willing and able to tolerate.
Keep it within the guardrails.
Exactly. But it's more than just a simple red light, green light check. It goes deeper.
How so?
Well, a really critical and often, frankly, overlooked part of this review process is actively hunting for unidentified risks.
Unidentified risks. Okay, that sounds ominous.
It can be. These are potentially the worst type of risk. Why? Because you're completely unaware of them until they hit you, often with pretty devastating force.
Yikes.
Yeah. It reminds me of that story about Bill Gates back when Microsoft was really at its peak. Someone asked him what kept him awake at night. And his answer wasn't competition from IBM or Apple at the time. He said it was, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, some new person somewhere in a garage coming up with a new product that I'm not aware of.
Wow, that's the unidentified risk.
That is the unidentified risk. The greatest threat isn't the lion you can see in the distance. It's the one you don't even know is stalking you from the tall grass. True risk mastery, it isn't just about perfectly managing the risks you know about. It's about building the capability, the peripheral vision, to spot the unforeseen.
That's a powerful and, yeah, slightly terrifying thought. So, okay, beyond leveraging things like big data and AI, which sounds a bit like technical magic to some of us, how do you actually cultivate that peripheral vision within an organization? Is it about culture? Is it about encouraging people to speak up? And maybe how does someone apply that personally, say, in their own career?
Oh, absolutely. It's profoundly cultural. Deeply cultural. It's about fostering what people call psychological safety, empowering the frontline staff, the people who are closest to the actual operations, the customers, the market, empowering them to flag emerging concerns or weird signals without any fear of reprisal.
So no shooting the messenger.
Definitely not. It's also about encouraging diversity of thought, having different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences, all scanning that horizon from different angles. Personally, for you, the listener, it means consciously stepping outside your echo chamber.
Right.
Break the bubble.
Exactly. Are you reading stuff outside your immediate field or industry? Are you deliberately talking to people who have vastly different perspectives or jobs? Are you actively asking yourself, okay, what new skill, what new technology, what trend could potentially make my current expertise less valuable or even obsolete? And what am I doing about that now? Not waiting until it happens.
Proactive self-assessment.
Yes. And this review process also means looking back. We need to see if we've maybe improperly assessed or estimated risk in the first place.
How would that happen?
Well, take an airline company, for example. They might initially project, say, 3 daily trips to the West Coast as being optimal. Balancing the expected demand with the operational risks involved.
But after running those flights for a few months, they might look at the data, the performance, the lack of issues, and realize, hey, you know what? We could easily handle 5 trips, maybe even 7, without breaking a sweat. This tells them they initially underestimated their capacity to manage that level of operational risk. They were too cautious.
Oh, okay. So they left potential on the table.
Precisely. And that leads to the flip side. Reviewing risk isn't just about spotting threats and mitigating them. It's also critically about identifying opportunities where you might be able to strategically accept more risk.
Okay, now that's interesting. Accepting more risk.
Yes. Maybe that same airline, realizing it has this spare capacity and capability, starts looking at adding, say, 2 new flights down to Mexico City. This isn't being reckless. If done properly, it's a calculated strategic opportunity to accept more risk for potentially significant gain. It forces you to ask the question, are we actually taking sufficient risk to achieve our growth objectives? Or are we maybe being too cautious?
Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective. So risk isn't just this negative thing to be constantly batted away. It's actually a strategic lever you can pull carefully for growth.
That's a fantastic way to frame it, a strategic lever.
So, okay, all this deep dive review, gathering insights, this constant self-correction, it must all culminate in some pretty fundamental changes sometimes, right? It's not just tinkering around the edges.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. Regular, rigorous review inevitably leads to revising things like target performance levels or even the organization's overall risk tolerance. This can ripple out to adjusting core business objectives, tweaking the overall strategy, maybe recalibrating the organizational culture to be more risk-aware or more opportunity-seeking.
Okay.
It definitely leads to reprioritizing certain risks, changing how the organization responds to them, and ultimately it can fundamentally alter the company's overall risk appetite. And this is crucial. These really significant changes, they require the explicit approval of the board of directors.
Ah, the board has the final say.
They hold the ultimate oversight. They need to ensure that any revised approach still aligns perfectly with the organization's big picture strategic direction and shareholder interests.
So thinking about the listener again, what does all this mean for someone just navigating their own career path or maybe entering a new field? It sounds like flexibility, constant self-assessment, and maybe the courage to adapt and change course are just paramount. It's not just about identifying your risks, but relentlessly checking if your understanding of them is even still accurate and asking yourself if you're taking the right amount of risk, not too much, not too little for your personal or professional goals.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. Yeah. And that idea of continuous questioning, continuous adaptation, that brings us perfectly to our third and final principle for this deep dive.
Right. Which brings us neatly to this crucial concept of continuous improvement in ERM itself. I mean, given how incredibly quickly things are changing, technology, globalization's customer expectations, it just seems like this has to be a non-negotiable necessity, doesn't it? Why is embedding this idea of continuous improvement so utterly critical in today's business landscape?
It's non-negotiable because, as you said, the business environment isn't just dynamic anymore. You could argue it's hyper-dynamic. To give you a sense of just how fast things change, think about product life cycles. Even in my own memory, right? I remember cassette tapes.
Oh, yeah, vividly, winding them with a pencil.
Exactly. Those things, they lasted, what, about 20 years in the market as the dominant way to listen to music, didn't they? Something like that.
Right.
Then CDs came out, and pretty quickly, Maybe not overnight, but certainly quite rapidly. They made cassettes largely obsolete for most people.
Yeah, that fell fast.
But now, think about music streaming services. The product cycles are incredibly short. Things can peak and start to decline really, really quickly, sometimes within months, maybe even weeks, for certain features or trends. So if your ERM system, your whole approach to risk, isn't continuously improving, it simply cannot keep pace. It's like trying to navigate a Formula One race using a horse and buggy. You're just going to get left in the dust.
That analogy perfectly captures the sheer speed of change we're dealing with. It's not enough anymore to just be reactive when something breaks. You have to proactively build in these mechanisms for ongoing improvement. So, okay, what are the practical, actionable ways organizations actually do this? How did they achieve continuous improvement within their ERM framework?
Well, one key method, and we touched on this a bit earlier, is really leveraging cutting-edge technology.
The data and AI again.
Right. Using big data, sophisticated data mining techniques, artificial intelligence. It's not just about being more efficient. It's about gaining foresight. It's about identifying those subtle shifts in industry trends or market dynamics, sometimes before they're obvious, and using that to inform your risk management in almost real time.
So, using tech to see around corners a bit.
Kind of, yeah. Another crucial thing is to relentlessly review your historically weak areas. Be honest about where you struggled. For instance, if your organization consistently has trouble accurately projecting, say, foreign currency fluctuations, and that's really critical for how you procure raw materials, well, then that's a prime target for intensive improvement efforts.
Don't just accept the weakness. Fix it.
Exactly. It's about systematically turning those known weaknesses into strengths through focused effort and maybe new approaches. And sometimes, improvement requires bigger changes. It might demand a significant company restructuring. Organizations often go through major restructurings, specifically to better align themselves with fundamental shifts they see happening in the external environment or the overall risk landscape. It's a big strategic move to make sure the organizational structure itself actually supports effective risk management going forward.
Right, making sure the org chart matches the reality.
Precisely. You also need to continuously adjust your risk appetite based on direct feedback. How are new products performing? If a new product launch is proving far more volatile or maybe surprisingly less volatile than you initially expected, your overall appetite for taking on that type of risk needs to be recalibrated based on that real-world data.
Learning from experience in real time. And are we also seeing completely new types of risk bubbling up? Things that maybe weren't even on the radar a decade or two ago, forcing companies to constantly update the ERM framework itself.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of continuous improvement, just acknowledging the emergence of entirely new risk categories. I mean, the most prominent example has to be cybersecurity, right?
For sure.
20, maybe 30 years ago. Cybersecurity wasn't a top-line concern for most companies. It might not have even been on the list now. It's absolutely a critical top-tier risk category. Organizations must add it to their risk portfolio, often with dedicated teams, significant budget, specialized expertise.
The whole industry now.
It is. And finally, benchmarking is vital, looking externally. Leveraging external industry data, comparing your internal performance against peers or best practices, learning from what others are doing successfully or maybe where they've stumbled. That external perspective helps guide your own improvement efforts. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel yourself.
Learn from the ecosystem. Wow. What a journey, really, into understanding how organizations don't just, survive, but actually try to thrive in this world of constant, relentless change. We've really unpacked these three essential principles of the review and revision component of COSO ERM. First, that critical need for assessing substantial changes as they happen. Then, the ongoing vigilance required in reviewing risk and performance against that backdrop.
Right.
And finally, the absolute necessity of baking in continuous improvement into the ERM system itself. It just profoundly highlights how vital it is to not just identify risks once, but to keep that entire process dynamic, constantly evolving, and relentlessly self-correcting.
That's the key. Dynamic.
It really reinforces that understanding these concepts deeply, getting the why behind them beyond just memorizing terms is so key to actually mastering risk management. And that applies across all 20 principles of the CISO framework, really.
It does. And, this raises, I think, an important final question for everyone listening. In a world where we've discussed how unidentified risks are often the most dangerous ones, how actively are you scanning your own horizons?
Good question.
Not just looking for the threats that could derail your plans, whether personal or professional, but also scanning for those hidden opportunities, the ones you haven't even conceived of yet. Because the principles we've talked about today, assessing change, reviewing performance, continuous improvement, they apply far beyond just large organizations. They're pretty essential tools for anyone navigating complexity and trying to achieve success in their own endeavors. So keep that curiosity alive, keep asking questions, and keep